Good evening, councilors. Before I begin looking over the budget with my colleagues, I'd like to make a few remarks. I would first like to commend our printer downstairs, Tricia, who put this budget together very quickly and did a fantastic job. Many times we overlook the people who are behind the scenes, but she did a fine job in putting this budget, printing this budget for the council and the department heads. Tonight we're going to begin deliberations on probably one of the most difficult budgets as far as decision-making in many years. We find ourselves in dire fiscal straits, and department heads will be here lobbying for every dollar they can receive in the FY09 budget. Councilors, we really have to put aside our political decisions as we move forward with our studies, which are going to take us into mid-June. This, however, should not preclude any councilor for lobbying for what she or he believes is in the best interests of the city of Fitchburg. I have every confidence in this city council to do its job for the taxpayers of Fitchburg. To set a few ground rules before we commence, I have spoken earlier today with Finance Chairman Hay, and I have also spoken with City Solicitor Ciota regarding actions that we take during this budget. Specifically, we discussed any amendments that may be made to the budget as presented by the mayor. Attorney Ciota noted in our discussions that if we as a council make a decision to cut any line items, it's in our best interest for the council to vote on each and every specific reduction in the line item, which in turn will reduce the overall suggested total of that particular department. On the other hand, we realize the council cannot tell the mayor where the total allocated money for a given department can be spent that we have just cut. As councilors, we all understand the statutes that we can't add a single penny to the budget, and I only repeat this because many citizens out there still don't understand the process. The cuts have been made, the budget has been submitted by the mayor. We cannot add anything. Since the FY09 budget is a controversial one, I would suggest proper decorum in these chambers be followed by all participants as we move forward. With that said, and prior to opening our deliberations, I would like to ask my colleagues tonight if you have further suggestions or comments before we begin. Councilor Hay.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would agree with your comments, and I would just ask that each one of us ask questions, gather information from each department head and the mayor when they are here, and I would ask that we wait until everybody has had an opportunity to present before us to take actions regarding amending the proposed budget. I think that's only fair to each department to let everybody present first, and then we do the work of looking at them individually. Thank you.
Anyone else like to make a comment, suggestion? Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. So what is the process here? Are we going to allow department heads to make their presentation, then we ask questions, and is it like last year where we make motions during the, after the presentation is concluded?
No, we will go line by line. I don't think it's going to be necessary unless the councilors want us to read what they are planning to do for the whole year. I think we're here to look at the financial portion, not to read what their goals and objectives have been. They have already been formulated with the mayor.
So as we ask questions on a line,
yes,
we can make a recommended motion?
We can make an amendment to that amount if we feel that it should be made. Counselor Hay?
I guess my point was that I would wait to make those until everybody has presented. In the past, when I first got on the council, they would have the departments come, and if the council was looking to find money for something, they would take it from the first guys who showed up, and then the folks at the end weren't getting touched at all. So I think it's fair to wait until everybody's gone through and then make amendments to the line items. That's just a recommendation.
Counselor Joseph?
And I would also like to concur with that recommendation that all of the motions be held till the end and then made motions to cut and then vote on each one like he had said individually and not do it as each department comes in. Because you may find, again, just as an example for the supplies line for each one that you may want to cut. But then you may find that 3/4 of the way through that, you know, it's worth it or not worth it, and then you've already made those motions, and those would already lose out as opposed to doing it all at the end. So I would suggest that we save motions to the end. Just a suggestion.
Counselor Caddy?
Feel about a running list, maybe consider a motion so that we have a running list. So during the budget process, we can review that list. Everyone has time to think of it. And then we'll see the actual numbers. You get the totals. And then when we come to our final hearing, everyone's had time to think about it. You know where your priorities are. And again, you're not caught on the last day trying to weigh things out.
That will be happening with the auditor here. So we will take it line by line. Counselor Hay?
Councilor Caddy, I have no problem with somebody suggesting that at the end they will be making a motion. It's the difference between that and actually making the motion.
Anyone else? Okay, councilors, fasten your seatbelts, because here we go. On page 54, the total Board of Health personal services in FY08 was $437,971. The mayor's request is $454,055 for FY09. Counselor Hay?
Mr. President, just a question. On page 53, we have the Board of Health with their mission statement, function, organization. Are we going to have the department heads speak to that page at all?
I think that would be a good idea.
Before we get to the numbers?
Right.
The mayor had indicated, I thought that she had wanted them to talk about that as some justification for the numbers.
Fine. Mr. Curry?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. For those who don't know me, my name is Steve Curry, and I am the director of the Board of Health. Seated with me, I want to say it correctly, the chairperson of the board, the three-member board, is with me, and that is Joanne Sozek. She is the chairperson, and the two other members, one is required to be a physician, Dr. Karos, and Erin Hicks. Basically, I've been asked to give you a brief overview of the department, and here I go. The Board of Health is basically here legislative mandated to maintain, protect, and improve the health and well-being of the city of Fitchburg. The Board of Health itself actually does not participate in day-to-day operation of the Board of Health, but the Board of Health members meet monthly and we discuss issues that are ongoing. And the Board of Health also is empowered to make laws and regulations in regards to maintaining public health within the city. The Board of Health oversees a 6-member office located in City Hall, one of which is a director, myself. Under the director, there are 2 code enforcement inspectors. These inspectors are charged with the duties of inspecting for housing, lead paint, asbestos, trash, and nuisance complaints within the city. There is also a food and milk inspector, which This is just a brief synopsis. They do have job descriptions which entitle, but this is the issues that are most spent. A food and milk inspector who does restaurants, retail food, pools and tanning. There is a public health nurse who investigates communicable disease, and she also administers immunizations when necessary, and she also distributes vaccine to all physicians within the city. And she is also very involved with emergency preparedness. We also have a principal clerk within the office, just one, and that rounds out our office upstairs. But within our budget, we also have a landfill scale operator who actually works at the landfill and weighs trucks and checks permits upon entry at the landfill. Also within the Board of Health budget, but not in the office, we have a 0.6 and 0.4, 3/5 of a salary and 2/5 of a salary for parochial school nurses, and they are responsible for nursing in the parochial schools. And that was a mandate because the school department could not be charged because of the parochial schools. So it was chosen to take it out of the health department. Personal services. The largest percentage of Board of Health time is spent on disease prevention, reporting, and control, and community sanitation, which involves housing, as I mentioned before, along with food protection and nuisances. As far as expenses, our largest percentage within the department is obviously rubbish removal and rubbish disposal, which totals $1.8 million for FY09. Some of the goals for the department, one being we hope to continue to protect public health within the city, disease prevention, and also community and environmental sanitation. Expenses are directly tied to goals. If my staff is doing their job, the city is a cleaner, safer place, which obviously would attract more residential, industrial, and business, which would stimulate the Fitchburg's economy. Other goals would also be to continue to explore where to increase revenue where possible. We do have a couple of site assignments. One has done very well, and one is proposing to do a non-hazardous liquid waste operation, which there will be conditions, but it will also produce revenue, hopefully additional for the city. Some of the key challenges for our department, continue to provide the services, very basically, that we've been providing all along with less staff and much more demand. Just to make people aware before we get to the budget and questions, I have been asked to mention any unfunded mandates coming this way, and there most likely will be one. Cities and towns are going to be state mandated probably by FY10 to have in place some sort of disposal operation for sharps and needles. There is legislation by many rubbish removal companies to get those needles out of the trash, which has caused many trash service individuals to be stuck. So that might be a mandate coming our way as soon as next July. That might involve kiosks, which my budget may have to be mandated to provide, which could be a cost of about $250 a month. I'm still exploring some sort of deal with Waste Management to get that program in place. I believe I've covered my overview. I'd like to go into the budget. Or any questions on that previous overview?
Before we get into the numbers, are there any questions? Councilor Joseph?
It's just on page 54, where it says streetlight expenses were estimated
Yeah,
to
that's a
run
mistake.
20,000. Is that the only mistake in those statements that don't belong there?
That's,
Are all the rest your statements?
that is correct.
Okay, I just didn't...
The 3 vacancies is a misprint, too. We actually only had 2 vacancies.
Okay. And then my other question, I guess, is to the layout of the budget. In the past, the charge for the revenue, basically, side of the receipts from waste management was always on this page in the budget. Is that something that's been moved to the page 4 now?
I believe that's in the front of the book.
Is that just a change of where it's being recorded?
On the budget, the original budget, in the meat of the budget, the expenses were only shown, and that's on page 57, right?
Right.
The revenue, I believe, would be on, as Steve pointed out in the beginning.
It used to be on the page with the trash, right?
No, it would be on the revenue page, which is on page 4, charges for services trash.
And I guess my question before we get into the whole thing about the budget kind of follows up with Councilor DiMartino's, even though she said it was great to have some optimistic news about the additional revenues that you're generating from the landfill, but is there a cap on the amount of revenues that waste management can receive on revenues from outside the city into our landfill?
The landfill is allowed to accept up to 1,700 tons a day. And depending how much it takes on that particular day affects how much revenue the city does receive. If it does go right up to the maximum 1,700, there is incremental fees between $950 and $1,700, which benefit the city very well. Somewhere in the, I believe it's $10 to $11.
Is that something that's negotiated right through 2012,
17,
2017?
yes.
So we can't,
2012 is actually the rubbish removal contract.
okay.
2017 is the contract, Sixth Amendment with the landfill.
So we can't restrict the amount of outside city product going into the landfill in order to make the landfill last at least till 2017 or longer? We have no
can't.
control over our own
That's
landfill and the
correct.
amount of stuff that goes in there.
Correct. The current cell they are in is actually owned by Waste Management and is in the town of Westminster.
Will it last till 2017?
The current cell they're in is projected to last until 2017.
Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale? You're all set? Anyone else? Going back to page 54. I'll just repeat the total Board of Health personal expenses, FY08, $437,971. FY09, $454,055. Total Board of Health expense, FY08, $39,600. FY09 mayor request, $44,300. Total Board of Health rubbish removal expense, FY08, $955,250. FY09, $1,043,000. Total Board of Health sanitary landfill expense, FY08, $749,000. FY09, $785,000. Total Board of Health in FY08, $2,181,821. FY09 request, $2,326,355. Any questions on that page? Counselor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. Steve and Joanne, thank you for being here and being first up. The nurses, from my years on the school committee, I know that the schools had always paid the nurses, the parochial school nurses. You mentioned that this was new this year. This is the first year at it?
Actually, no, this is the second.
The second. And last year, the schools took care of it? Or did the Board of Health?
The 2 school nurses were taken care of by the schools.
By the schools last
Previous
year?
to FY08.
Okay.
Public health nurse has always been in the Board of Health.
Right. And the nurses that we have now in the public schools, are they 2 part-time jobs, the way you have
They're
it listed?
actually 2 full-time employees, but out of my budget only comes a portion. So a portion of their time is spent at the public schools and a portion at the parochial schools.
Okay, so the other portion is from the school budget?
Correct.
Okay. I know we'll get at it later in legislative affairs about trash fees, and one of the things that I have learned, and a lot of things have been learned in the debate about these fees, is what happens to our landfill in 10 years, and what a problem we may have in 10 years. Problems may be millions of dollars that we're now basically getting for free that we may not have for free in 10 years from now. And I think in the last couple of weeks, we've learned that we should really be planning for that, because 10 years isn't too far away. And if this debate on fees has done anything, it's, I think, brought some awareness to that. So, and that's something that we really have to watch out for. Am I right?
You are.
Do we have any idea what's going to happen in 10 years?
I can tell you that there are plans currently with Waste Management and the landfill for expansion. One of them being hopefully going with new and innovative techniques, possibly going back to the old city landfill that we had and potentially expanding that. There are talks in place.
I just wanted to bring it up a little bit, and that we do have to keep an eye on that.
Right.
Thank you, Steve.
Counselor Caddy.
A couple questions. Earlier tonight, Mr. Saracen alluded to a projected income of $2,130,000, and we realized $2,400,000. You must have heard him say that. Could you tell me how, and also I wanted to touch on Benson Street, an income of $90,000.
Right.
Could you explain how we realized the $2,400,000, and explain how we're getting an income from Benson Street?
It is actually not Benson Street, it is actually AKS on Airport Road. They are site assigned by the city and DEP, and they are charged rent $500 a month, and they also charge tipping fees. At the current rate, they are at $2 a ton. They provide to the city for every ton of trash they accept. They give the city $2. They have done very well in the last 6 to 8 months, and the city has been getting checks in the range of $8,000 to $15,000.
What do you mean when you say trash?
I don't mean trash. I mean construction and demolition material. They're a reclamation type business, like a transfer station. They process debris, sort it, and sell it to where they can make profit out of it.
Does that include metal?
It does.
And that's on the $90,000, but what about the $2,400,000? How do we realize that? Was that out of tipping fees?
That is the, also the landfill has done quite well. At the beginning of the fiscal year, was doing very well. until the economy took a little downturn. It has slowed down in the last 6 months, but it did very well previous.
You said that we have a city employee at the landfill that weighs the
That's correct.
trucks. My question would be, if we could convince the populace of Fitchburg to recycle, and instead of our waste going to the landfill, it goes to the recycling bins, and the weight of those trucks are cut, do we realize a savings
The city would realize the savings.
for not putting trash into the landfill?
Correct. It would cut our disposal costs.
Is there any, I noticed this past week that there were some stickers made for recycling, to put on bins.
Trash barrels, yeah.
How many have been issued that you know of?
I received 500 about 2 weeks ago. I went through that in about a week and a half. I've got another 500, and about half of that stack is gone. Hopefully they're making it to the barrels.
I put mine on. Any projections on that? Can you project, I mean, if we cut our solid waste by 10%, 20%, I mean, could you project what that could mean in dollars so that the citizens of Fitchburg could realize what a savings that could be?
If right now we're spending anywhere between $700,000 and $800,000 to dispose of trash, right now we have somewhere between a 10 and 15% recycling rate. If we just take 10% of that trash, 10% of the disposal cost goes into free recycling. It would cut the $700,000 by 10%.
By 10%?
Yep.
Is there any plans by you or your department to educate our citizens?
We have been trying through FATV and other media sources to do so, to educate. It's a long road. It needs plenty of time and effort.
Well, thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Mr. Curry, I see here that in FY08, we had a total of 9 employees, and in FY09, it's now 9.5. And the difference I see is there is an additional half-time clerical principal clerk for about $20,000.
Right.
Can you justify that added half-time position?
Yes, I'm proposing to hire a half-time clerical principal clerk, simply for the reason is I have 3 phone lines and a very active front desk, and I have 1 administrative assistant to deal with 3 phone lines and customers at the desk. She just can't do it all, so now I'm stuck with pulling an inspector or a nurse in to do administrative duties, and then it's taken away from what they're trying to accomplish. A simple half-time person would allow the 2 code inspectors to spend the afternoon in the streets rather than covering lunches and breaks and whatnot.
And they do this every week. Every week they're covering.
Daily. We have to have a meeting every morning to... I tried to have 2 people in the office at all times. It's impossible to be alone.
Thank you.
Councilor Starr.
I want to thank you for about the 20 stickers you gave me. I filled up 2 barrels in about 8 days of recyclables. Getting back to how we use the landfill, Waste Management, I'm sure, has contracts in tons of communities around here. Is there anything in place up at the landfill now to say, you know, we create a wonderful recycling atmosphere and everybody's trash is getting I guess you could say everybody's dumping less and less. Is there anything to prevent, say, Waste Management from taking things from other communities and putting them in their trucks? What kind of stipulations are in place there? Do we know exactly which trucks are servicing Fitchburg or Westminster also? Is there any way to keep, say, Waste Management from not taking advantage of us if we were to continue recycling? Because I just have this bad feeling that as the residents of the city become more and more aware of recycling, which hopefully they are, we may not really get a good idea of how much we're cutting back on dumping fees, because we could potentially be taken advantage of by the company.
Part of the
Taking-
program is
taking
to
things
give a
from-
monthly update to show the recycling rates. And that's all part of the education. I know the town of Dartmouth just started the pay-as-you-throw program, and they came right out with an article saying, congratulations to the residents. They're now up to 51% recycling rate, which cut the disposal cost by X. I'm not clear on your question as far as the trucks go. Yes, it's...
I'm trying to...
Every truck has identifiable features. They do all look alike. I hear it almost every day that the recycling truck went in there into the landfill and dumped the recycling in the landfill.
I'm not talking about the recycling truck. What I'm talking about is the regular rubbish trucks.
They have identifiable numbers on the trucks.
Okay. Just thinking, if they don't meet their quota, I guess you could say, before they usually dump, is there anything there to prevent them from, say, taking trash from other communities, putting them in the backs of those trucks, and then adding them to our landfill? I mean, are we going on a good faith contract with Waste Management that they're not going to do something like this to us? Is there anything in place? Because I really think people are going to want to see a return on it, and I think we need to have all the bases
I have to
covered.
review the contract, and I believe there is some language in there. Obviously, it would take some investigative work on my office part to follow.
Which, of course, you're short-staffed as it is, we know, but it's something that people could very easily take advantage of our situation.
If it's not in the contract, I think it could be written in.
Because people, if they're accustomed to so much coming in all the time, who's to say that they're not going to continue bringing in that
The thing
amount?
regarding that is there's, I believe, only one community that isn't pay-as-you-throw, and that's Leominster. So it would be a surrounding community, I mean. So I think it would be a little bit easier policed.
Do you understand where I'm coming from? The
not
question,
sure.
the question I'm trying to ask is, I just think that Waste Management could take huge advantage of us by us doing all this recycling and then just adding more trash to the back of each truck from, say, other communities. I mean, it's the type of thing that could happen. I just really don't want to be taken advantage of.
Right. And if the pay-as-you-throw thing did fly, or the bag system did fly, if it's coming from a surrounding community, that would be measurable.
I'm going on the assumption right now, as it is,
But
as
if
it
you follow
stands
me, the
now.
bags would be identifiable, and they...
Absolutely.
Bags that aren't from the city.
Well, we would realize that, but right now, I'm just going on the assumption,
Right.
as we stand right now.
Right.
Maybe if it doesn't pass, is there something that could be in place? Because I could really see us getting gypped.
I could review the contract on that. And
Thanks, Steve.
Councilors, I'd just like to make a comment, and if councilors disagree with me, that's fine, but I think we're here to discuss the budget, and whether the trash fee is good or bad is not really on the agenda. This is for the budget. However, we will proceed. Councilor Hay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Steve, on 55, we have the Assistant Director. And last year, I know they split the director's budget, the line item in the assistant director, because they were anticipating that the director would be leaving. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so last year, we had $32,620.
Right.
If we double that, it comes to $65,240. Yet for this year, we're asking $68,382. Is that an anticipated step, or is that
It was actually from, I'd like to redesign the position, so it was actually from the middle management contract rather than the inspector's contract.
okay? So we're anticipating that when an individual gets into that position, they will be funded under the middle manager's contract as opposed to the inspector's contract. Is that a duties and responsibility change, or is, what brings about that change in that added expense?
That position was actually the senior sanitary inspector position previous to Mr. Jersey retiring, which was myself. I have proposed to change the job description to entail more, because the senior sanitary inspector's job description basically dealt with housing and anything else the director directed. I revised it so that that individual would be required to be licensed to do many more things rather than be limited,
Thank you.
just to keep it basic.
I just, when I see change, I want an explanation.
It
Thank
makes
you.
sense.
Councilor Tran?
Thank you, Mr. President. What kind of questions does your office get that you are asking for an additional part-time clerk, and that you're having sanitary inspectors to answer the phones?
What kind of questions? Well, for example, this time of year, dump permits run fiscal year. So all 1,000 dump permits will have to be renewed by somewhere around July 1st. They expire on June 30th. So those customers will be coming in on a regular basis. In addition to the 20 to 25 complaints we get from walk-ins, and then basically the 3 phone lines, and the complaints we get from those. Questions, there are complaints in regards to housing, requesting inspections. They are all sorts of disposal questions. What can I put out at the curb? What can't I put out at the curb? I have this item, what can I do with it?
Well, office visits, I understand, because you already have a full-time clerk or clerk there to handle office visits. I'm suspecting that all the answers to these questions are posted on the website for the public use?
They are.
Okay.
I'm not so sure that the website is being actively used.
Then we need to do that.
It is there.
And of course, there's technology out there that can reduce the use of clerical clerks. Phone
That's correct.
systems, I believe the mayor is working to search for a phone system that can provide all the information.
I explored that, and I actually applied for a grant through bioterrorism for a voice-over IP phone system for the office, for that simple reason. Unfortunately, the cost of the phone system was about $16,000, and I was denied. But I did investigate that avenue.
Well, that amount is nothing comparing to the the part-time clerk you're looking for, and other increase.
The human direct exposure is always people
Right.
seem to like better rather than push one for rubbish complaints.
No, Mr. President, we have a budget in front of us that calls for reduction in personnel, and that's something that I can accept. But what I cannot accept is adding personnel in a time where the budget is calling for reducing personnel and increasing and instituting new fees. I think we should, for this budget, we should work with what we have. It's a bad time to increase personnel when we're asking other departments to reduce personnel. That's why I stand in terms of adding personnel, and every line item that calls for additional personnel, changing part-time positions to full-time, which, of course, increase salaries and including benefits. I can guarantee you that I will vote a no on all those line items. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Clark?
Thank you, Mr. President. Steve, half-time employee, would that person be eligible for full-time health insurance benefits?
No.
They would not?
No.
Thank you.
Counselor Boisvert?
Thank you. On your overtime account, on that line item, you had on FY '08, 30,000, and now you're looking for an increase of 40,000. How do you justify that?
That is actually overtime, which is 100% reimbursed by the landfill. It is overtime for an individual for Saturdays, and the current individual that works there has to work weighing in trucks past time because of construction. They're working on the cell, they weigh trucks, and do it on the off hours the landfill is open. Basically, I asked for the increase due to increases in pay, which would increase the overtime. It is 100% reimbursed by the landfill.
Thank you.
Counselor Di Natale?
Thank you. Piggybacking off Council Boyver on the overtime. This year, $30,000 was appropriated for overtime expenses, and we've spent about 70% of that through April. We've got 2 months remaining. And based on that spend rate, based on the numbers, it looks like we may potentially, if not meet the 30,000, we may go a little under that. And we're increasing that line item by 33%. I believe that might have been, that was why I was going to ask the question of why the increase, because when I look at this, you know, we may not even spend the 30 we have this year, but we're asking for 10,000 more next year. And that, I heard your justification. That is why I had some questions about this was, you know, it doesn't look like we're going to go over this year and we're asking for more next year, but you said it was because of the increases in pay for the employees would account for the jump.
I may have answered that incorrectly. The current construction that's going on is going to increase the pay of the individual that works additional hours. I didn't mean the increase of salary.
Okay.
There's construction going on quite a bit, and I suspect that he may run the overtime account a little bit more than usual.
Again, as I did with all these line item accounts, you know, we have $30,000 for overtime, and we've only spent 20 of that. We've got less than 2 months left. And now we're adding 10 to that number.
Right.
I know we said we're going to wait till after the entire presentation. That's just an area of concern that I have, that line item. Thank you.
Counselor Joseph?
I just, on the principal clerk, additional half clerk, I must, in my visits to the health department, I have always gotten more than adequate service, whether you had the one person there or the 1.5 persons there. I probably get equal or better with the one person there right now than I did previous, because I really didn't see the other person helping you all that much. Would the other half a person be in another department, shared like it was in the past, or would you just be hiring a half-time person?
I'd be looking for a half-time person.
Not shared
Not
with another?
shared. I'd consider it if it was an option for help. When you do come in the office, the other half-time person is probably an inspector who should be out on the street doing inspections. That's just my concern.
When they are, and I have a question, I usually get a very timely response. They
Right.
call me back within 4 hours or whatever, because I know they're busy.
I'm just looking for avenues to get them out on the street.
Yep. Now, when I look at the clerks that you currently have funded in your '08 revised expenses, it is the 85,884, is that number 2
That's correct.
inspectors?
Yes. It basically was combined years past because CDBG paid both of those individuals.
Yeah. And now, in the budget that we're proposing, there's 3 plus a possibility of another one, so is this partly what some of the responsibilities you were doing, or is this three positions built into this budget minus the red code? Is that 3 positions where you had in the past 2 positions?
Right. Back in February, I asked for $250,000 in CDBG funds, and basically it was to fund those positions. I was only granted $77,000.
Okay, so this budget, without the red, includes 1 additional sanitation code inspector.
Sanitary code inspector, yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Hay?
Yeah, it's the $77,000 at the bottom, less CDGB funds. Is that just 1 sanitary code inspector, Steve?
That is 1 sanitary code inspector, and is also 20% of the principal clerk salary and 20% of the director's salary.
So 20% of the 76,786, 20% of the 45,623, and then 20% of, I'm going to assume the 52,931?
If I heard you correctly, yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Solomito?
Mr. President. Mr. Curry, you did, when you mentioned about hiring the part-time clerk, I think you answered my question when you mentioned that you want to keep the inspector out on the road. And I know that my colleague has questioned the idea of hiring people when we're going to lay other people off. I guess I'm of your position is why bring a higher-priced personnel in to answer the telephone that those people are paying benefits to. We're paying a code inspector, who we're paying a higher salary, correct? We're bringing him off the street to have him answer a telephone, correct? And what you want to do is put in a person part-time for a cheaper salary with no benefits.
Correct.
It would seem as though that is a wise employment to me. Number 2, I think with all the, is it fair to say with all the new foreclosures that have come up within the last year, and definitely going to increase, that your inspectors are going to be far busier than they were with the last 2 years, correct? But the last thing we want to do is keep the inspectors into the building. We want to get them out on the road, correct?
Correct.
It would seem to me to be a wise employment move to hire 1 part-time, half-time person, but, all right, thank you.
Councilor DiMartino?
I'd like to go back to the overtime. I was looking, I go back to 205, and it's almost doubled since 205, and it's because, is there 1 or 2 people in your office who now work at the landfill?
2, correct.
And they get reimbursed by the landfill?
100%.
So they're on our payroll and they're on their payroll?
They are on our payroll, and we get a monthly check for the cost of their salary. Whatever the hours they work, we are reimbursed for on a monthly basis.
Yeah. How can that be if we are already got a contract with the landfill? Is that not a conflict of interest?
I don't see it as.
I would like a legal opinion on that, because we have employees who now work for the city, and then on certain hours they work at the landfill,
Right.
and they
are
get
paid
reimbursed
by the city.
by the city.
Correct.
And then you get reimbursed by the landfill.
That is correct.
I might be wrong, but I would have thought that that might be a little bit of a conflict of interest. And I'd like a legal opinion on that, if that was okay.
We will ask Mr. Ciotta.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's my question.
Mr. Curry, I have a question regarding the nurses showing 13, 23, and 22% increases. Is there a reason for those increases? Are those on the contract?
The school nurses.
Yes.
Are actually, my understanding, include a step and a 2% increase. The public health nurse actually is a different scenario. She has recently been accepted into the inspectors union. She was rejected by the school nurse union, so I tried to plug her in to a comparable position where she would have been with the school nurse position in the inspectors union at an IN 10 step 2, which are with her qualifications and her time of service.
So the 2% increase that the school nurses got, am I to assume that they're in the same union as the teachers?
Right now, they're not in the same union. But I tried to plug her into the inspectors union at a comparable place which she would have been with the school nurses.
Thank you. Councilor Hay?
Getting back to the overtime thing, Steve, people work at the landfill and you get a check to reimburse us for their time from Waste Management.
It is included in all the benefits.
It includes benefits also?
Correct.
Not just the hourly rate that they...
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilor Caddy?
Steve, on the assistant clerk, what do you consider the hours to be part-time?
I'm actually looking for coverage for lunch. So whatever the hours are, which I suspect was somewhere between 4 and 5 hours a day, as long as they cover lunch, I'm open.
So would you say 20 hours a week?
I'm thinking 20 to 25 hours a week, yes.
And what would an assistant clerk make per hour?
And the assistant would make $18.77 per hour. That's the union, the clerical unions,
With no benefits?
with no benefit.
Give me 1 second, I'm sorry. $20,800, and you've got budgeted 25. At 20 hours a week, at 1,040 hours a year, 52 weeks, comes to $20,800.
That's 4 hours.
And that's at 20 out. That's at $20 an hour.
That would be 4 hours, and I actually calculated for 5 hours. 5 hours. Per
Hours a day?
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
I'm thinking 10 to 3, but I'm open to suggestions.
Thank you.
Councilor Tran?
Thank you, Mr. President. Steve,
The overtime account increased 2,200 from fiscal year '07 to fiscal year '08.
I'm sorry, what account?
The overtime account was $30,000 appropriated for the overtime account. Wasn't sufficient for last year or this year?
It is sufficient.
It is.
Currently, yes.
So there's really no need to increase it by 10,000.
I'm concerned about the construction up there.
Thank you.
Councilor Boivin?
Thank you. I would like to move off the overtime account just for a second. It's clothing allowance. I noticed you went from $3,000 in '08 to $3,600 for the in '09. Who gets the clothing allowance?
That is the inspectors union, and those monies include the proposal for an additional sanitary code inspector.
Well, it still doesn't, I don't understand. I've never seen anybody in any uniform.
It's a $600 stipend the inspectors union receives.
It's a contractual obligation.
Contractual
Oh, okay.
obligation.
Okay, thank
And
you.
that number includes the new proposal for a new inspector.
Thank you.
But in red, that's all hinges on the trash fee.
Counselor Hay, did you have a question? Anything more on page 55? Counselor Clark?
Thank you, Mr. President. Steve, I think I know where this is now, but in the past, there was a line about code enforcement and a lawyer. Is that now gone to strictly the lawyer side of things?
Correct.
Not in your budget?
Mr. Ciota has met his obligations as far as legal help that we were looking for.
So when you're in need of doing something in that regard, you would go directly to him, and it's his call as to whether we move on a certain item or
It's not
not?
necessarily his call. We often have we're in housing court just about every week, and
Yep.
we often have some difficult cases where, not every case needs legal help, but there is that occasional court case, and Mr. Ciota has always been very receptive to offering us legal assistance when we need it.
Okay,
Whether it's
so-
actually advice before the hearing or actually an appearance.
So when you feel you may need it, you will go in that direction?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on page 55? Any other questions? Move to page 56, Board of Health expenses. Counselor Di Natale?
Office supplies. $6,000 was appropriated this year, and through April, only 40% of that number has been spent. My question is, do you need $6,000 in office supplies for FY09? Of $6,000. I'm looking at the reports, and only 40% of that number has been spent, with only less than 2 months to go.
A reason for that change is through a grant, we were able to purchase a new copy machine through the bioterrorism grant, which cut our expenses. So, yes.
Okay, and so we haven't even spent half of that account this year, but we're requesting the same amount next year.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Curry, you must have accruals in that account?
I'm sorry?
Do you have accruals, bills coming in for that account in the next couple of months?
I still didn't hear the beginning portion of what you said.
Do you have money accrued for future expenses in the next 2 months?
I have money accrued, yes.
Just to
Counselor?
piggyback off that, Mr. President, in FY06 and FY07, there were no encumbrances at the end of the year in the Board of Health Department, so that's why I asked the question. Thank you.
I will make a note that at FY07, we were at 8,500 for office supplies.
That's what you spent, but I received, Mrs. Saracen was kind enough to give me the FY06 and FY07 year-end totals with encumbrances, and there were no encumbered monies in that department those 2 years.
Correct.
That's all I wanted to make note of. Thank you.
Any other questions on page 56? Counselor Boivin?
Yes, on page 56, under mileage, I noticed in FY08 it was 9,000, and now you're going up to 11,700. Is there a reason for that?
Yep, that actually includes now the public health nurse who has been transferred to the inspectors union. And it also included an additional code inspector, again, all hinging on the passing of the trash fee.
Thank you.
Any other questions on 56? Page 57. Board of Health rubbish removal expense, Board of Health sanitary landfill expense. Questions? Councilor Joseph.
I guess I just want to go back to a comment. I couldn't leave that one untouched with the, now that the nurse is going into the management, middle management union, that qualifies her for a uniform expense and additional mileage expense. And when we talk about the Department of Revenue's letter that said what abuses we've done to ourselves over the past couple of years in union negotiation contracts, it just pulls it out and says, look here, you know, $600 for people to get dressed in the morning. They have uniforms. They don't have any uniforms. They dress the same way I do when I go to work, and nobody pays for my clothes when I go to work. But we add a nurse now, and she's going to get an additional $600. And now that we've added the nurse to a specific union, because she didn't fit anywhere else, we're going to give her mileage, where she probably never got mileage before. And it just, to me, it's just, it goes to show...
I could interject, she did receive mileage.
Okay. It's just this whole thing about what we've done to ourselves in union contracts. It just highlights it and throws it in your face when it just says, okay, you know, get dressed for work, here's $600. Thank you very much.
Councilor Di Natale.
Cleanup Board secure funds. The line item was for $3,000 in FY08. So far this year, we've only spent 56% of that account, and you're requesting a 233% increase. Can you please explain why?
Yes, the city has encountered 200-plus foreclosures. Many banks are not responsive, out-of-town owners due to these foreclosures. I have been stuck on a couple of occasions where I needed to go to court, which took extended amount of time, and I had a vacant building that contained quite a bit of trash, which was a huge nuisance to the neighborhood. Took me quite a while to get response. It would have cost a couple of $1,000s to get the job done and lien the property. I just didn't have the funds to do it. Basically, I'm trying to protect the city by, as a last resort, when I can't get these out-of-town banks and owners to respond in a timely manner, do the job, hire somebody, do the job, and then lien the property.
Thank you.
Is there any chance of us recouping any of that money?
If the property is sold, the liens would be recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So yes, in a case like that, it would be recouped. It may take some time, but it would be recouped.
Thank you. Anyone else on page 57? Yes, one question from Councilor
I just have a question, Mr. President. Now that we've finished discussing the line items, is this where we can make suggestions but not a motion
Yes.
of areas we'd like to
Yes.
down the road? My suggestions are, my personal suggestions that we should review more closely down the road. Part-time clerk of $25,000. Overtime account, reduction of $10,000. Office supplies, a reduction of $2,000. And cleanup fund account, a reduction of $3,000 for a total of $40,000. Those are just my suggestions for a later date. Thank you.
Does anyone else have suggestions? Thank you, Mr. Curry and Ms. Sozak.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Councilors will now move to the airport. Gentlemen. The airport begins on page 72. prior to us reviewing this, I do have a question. There does not appear to be an overview page prior to the airport budget. Was that submitted to the mayor?
Yes, sir, it was.
There was?
have it.
You gentlemen have any extra copies, or?
You can have mine.
You can, no, if you're going to make a presentation, go ahead, and then we'll get a copy from the mayor.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Fitchburg Airport's mission under, or Fitchburg Airport mission under the Federal Airports Act, in compliance with the National Airport Plan, is to maintain a safe and self-sustainable environment for aircraft operations, serving the needs of the region's welfare and growth of industry, business, social services, while adhering to the federal, state, and local regulations. Basically, our department is made up of 7 people, including part-time help. We're overseen by the Airport Commission. The commission is appointed by the mayor, and the manager is hired by the commissioner and acts as their executive officer. The airport department functions. The airport supports both general and business aviation in the northern Worcester County area. Fitchburg is the home base of approximately 140 aircraft. The airport offers for rent land, tie-downs, and heated and unheated hangar space. We lease land and facilities to the local businesses there. These include charter services, flight school, 2 aircraft maintenance businesses, and a small restaurant. The airport also operates the sole fuel business here at the airport. Safety of flight is our first priority. We are responsible for determining the needs for and issuing NOTAMs, that's notice to airmen, when conditions warrant. The runways must be maintained and kept open. This includes maintenance of lighting equipment, monitoring of navigational aids, runway markings, eliminating contaminated runways, including FOD, ice, snow, and doing safety checks and directing aircraft. The staff also handles administrative duties, aircraft fueling, catering of aircraft, customer service issues, lease and rental administration, vehicle equipment maintenance and repair, building and grounds, vegetation, and animal control. And I'm going to skip a little bit of this in the interest of time. Basically, we're divided into 3 sections. The administration section, which does record keeping, accounts payable and receivable, billing and mailing, badge administration, supervising the aerodrome, and all facets of airport operations, marketing, enforcement of state and federal regulations. That portion of our budget represents approximately $188,740 in the year coming. Last year, that section cost us about $173,000. We also have aircraft services. We meet the needs of base and transient aircraft by supervising parking, supplying fuel, and catering for crews and passengers, fuel the aircraft on demand and all related data entry, maintain and oversee 81 tie-down spaces and the placement of aircraft in city hangars. We spent approximately $654,000 last year, and we're looking to spend about $678,000 this year. And then under maintenance, it's buildings and grounds, grass and vegetation control, vehicle and equipment maintenance, runways, navigational aids, and lighting. And last year was about $133,000, and we're looking to be about $149,000 this year. If you'd like me to go into what the output of each one of those things, I'd be glad to, but I think you're probably more interested in talking about the numbers right now. So.
Councilor Hay.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're looking at sick personal day buyback, which was budgeted in fiscal year 08 is 2,000, revised 5513, and requested and approved by the mayor this year at 10,000, an increase of 81%. Is that contractual, or?
It's people, they're having a hard time making ends meet, and they're turning in their vacation time for money. And we got a big surprise this year. We didn't have, we had about $2,000 budgeted, and I'm just trying to stay ahead of the game.
But my question is that a contractual obligation that you have to pay them for sick time that they can turn in? Is that through a union negotiation? No. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. Mr. Girton, Administrative Assistant, FY08, $33,408. FY09, $40,559, an increase of 21%. Why?
Last year, she was awarded a merit increase, 2 steps, and she's due for a step increase this year. Just about the time she was, the mayor had congratulated her and said, thank you for all the good work, etc. And it was just about at the time that the council said, put a freeze on everything. And we owe her the money, and that's why it's in there.
So the step itself is $7,000?
There's 2 steps.
2 steps?
And a third step.
Third step?
Yes.
And, Mrs. Saracen, is that, we can't touch that?
I'm not sure on that one. I would have to defer to the legal opinion.
I'd like that to be asked of the city solicitor on that particular line item, the legal obligations of that.
We shall do that.
Thank you.
Councilor
Oh,
Di Martino,
I'm sorry.
you done?
I had one more question. Mr. Girton, when I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago, you said that the council is not supposed to touch this budget, make any cuts to it. And you said, you cited a law, you referenced a law, and you had a document that...
I said to you, yes, it was, I think I said Chapter 90, Section E through K.
And what I understood was that what the council...
Chapter 90, Section 90, Chapter 9. Chapter 90,
Section
50, thank you very much.
And I understood the council made cuts last year, and I was told by you that because of that chapter law, they weren't supposed to do that.
That is my opinion, but, and we've referred it again to Mr. Ciota for clarification.
Has he gotten back?
Not yet,
He hasn't gotten
No.
back? Okay.
but
I disagreed with that, but I wanted him to give an opinion because I find it hard to believe that we can't touch anything from this, but I'll wait to hear from him on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Di Martino.
It's about the overtime. I've got the budgets from '07 and '08, and your overtime on your line item at that time was $12,000. And now it has come down to $3,000, so it's more than a 50% cut.
Okay.
And I'm wondering why that is. I mean, that is an awful big cut. I mean, I see 12,000. I'm wondering, am I reading this right?
Well, actually, what we really did is that we put an extra line item in and cut them out because there was so much confusion last year when we went through the budget. So if you look on the bottom, you see holiday pay.
Or you separated it?
We pulled it out so that you
Okay.
could distinguish the two, and we left the overtime alone.
Because last year you had holiday and overtime together.
Right,
So
and
now you
that-
separated it.
That's correct.
So now the holiday is still only coming in at 2,600, am I
Right.
reading that?
That's
And with the 3, you're still going to, but it's still an awful cut.
Well, no, it's only $400.
Okay,
But I'm trying to use part-time help a little bit more
Okay.
than full-timers.
okay. I just thought I was reading it wrong.
No, you're...
But you separated it.
you're
Okay,
good.
thank you.
Councilor Caddy.
The same question, but I just want to make a point. The administrative assistant getting a 21% raise when we have entire departments in the city that have received 0 in the last 3 years. So out of principle, I'm going to have an awful hard time voting on that alone. Thank you.
May I say something? No matter...
He's in charge, not me.
By cutting our budget, you save the city absolutely $0. And instead, because it's... Go ahead, again. Don't argue. Go ahead. Oops, I'm sorry, I can't remember.
Go ahead.
you don't save the city any money, because any money that the airport, we are self-sufficient, any money that the airport generates stays at the airport. So it's not going to go anywhere else, and we have the funding, and the commission has already approved her raise. And actually, they tried to put it in effect last year, and the council, when they made that rule, and stopped it. And it was not just a step increase, it was a merit raise. She worked her heart out for you guys.
Can I speak?
I would like to make a comment about that. We've got a police department down there that's going out every day, putting on bulletproof vests, driving vehicles that should be put in a junkyard. We've got firefighters who are running into burning buildings while other people are running out. Yes, the fire department got their raise, but the police department hasn't got their raise. They're putting their life on the line every day, and we're going to give a 21% increase to administrative assistant. That is wrong, Fred. That is wrong. Councilor Tran.
Mr. Curtin, a month ago, you came in front of this council and you gave a presentation on the airport. You also indicated that it doesn't cost the city a penny to operate the airport. So what part of the $1,015,000 budget that the taxpayers are not responsible for?
It's none. We generate the revenue for that budget.
So is that true?
Yes. Actually, I think you developed a spreadsheet that shows the revenues offsetting all of your expenses. And I believe water and wastewater is going to hand it out also, and that would help answer the question.
Councilor Solomito.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a big clarification for Councilor Di Natale. When you asked about the Chapter 90, Section 51, in the dispute as to did the city have any control, and was there any feedback or response from our legal department, I did speak with John Barrett, the assistant, today. He told me that an opinion should be forthcoming very soon. In their opinion, from what he told me, is that general law, the municipal finance law, will supersede Chapter 90, Section 51. And I'm not going to make the determination, but at least there's a clarification or an opinion coming out to your inquiry. The law department is doing the work, and that's what he told me they think their opinion is going to be, that the council does have the control as compared to Chapter 90, Section 51. Whether that's the final opinion, I don't know.
Yeah,
But
I don't know. John has not yet seen the grant assurances that the city signed.
all right.
And they specifically, and I'm not a lawyer, I don't know.
Yeah, I
They
know,
specifically say, though, that Chapter 90, Section 51E
Okay, all right.
applies.
I just wanted to relate what I was told by John Barrett today, and that's all. That's all.
Thank you. Councilor Joseph.
I'm confused by the sick leave personal day buyback. Normally, that's something that somebody gets when they retire.
You have the option of, I sold a week last year.
Okay, so,
Councilor,
Yeah,
can we defer it to an explanation
clarification.
is that in everybody's contract?
No, I'm going to clarify because Councilor Joseph has it pretty much correct. Sick leave buyback is a benefit where you typically sell up to 25% of your value of days when you either retire or die. That's the only time an individual would get those monies. However, if someone retired in the department, they could use this account, per se. But what it covers, what's for the young staff that you have, what it covers is personal and vacation day buybacks. And Those are year to year.
So you give me 5 personal days, because that's a benefit that the city, through contract, says you can have 5 personal days for any reason. And that's a benefit. But if you don't take those 5 personal days, we'll pay you for them?
Well, what you do is you can earn personal days if you're not out sick for a month, on a month-to-month basis. And different contracts have different amounts, but typically, personal days, I think that group would be able to sell a week, because you can earn maybe 6 days a year. And then vacation, some of the staff, I believe, could sell up to 2 weeks a year.
So basically, we've made
1 or 2 weeks.
54-week years for most employees instead of a 52-week year. They can have a 54-week year. They have a vacation, they get paid for it. They don't take a vacation, they get paid for it.
Well, what happens here, as Mr. Girton pointed out, is some people are selling the time because they could use the money instead of taking the vacation. So, but usually every individual cannot sell the base or the 2 vacation weeks that they earn. If they earn more than 2, then they could probably sell 1 of those weeks.
I just think it's bad practice. I think that when you have a day's vacation, you take a day's vacation. If you work on a day, you can't get paid as a vacation day because you're double dipping for that same day. Crime analyst, do you have a specific project that you want the crime analyst to do this year, or are you just throwing in 5,000?
No, that line item, I thought the mayor told me with this one, Dick, but we left it in here because that's the way it came back to me. But I thought the mayor had taken that crime analyst and put it someplace else in the budget.
Well, yeah, for other departments, it's in another department, it's in the IT budget.
Okay.
However, the mayor may not have taken it out of your budget to make sure that it is funded by the airport, by their revenues.
Okay, so this person, we don't have a project for this person, you just feel that you'll have...
We use him on demand.
Have $5,000 worth of work for him. And what is the explanation on adding the line item for holiday 1 at 12 holidays?
Well, if you recall last year when we came before you, and there was a problem. We have to work 7 days a week. And some of those days are holidays. So we have to pay our people holiday pay. And that's what that line item is.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Hay.
Mr. President, if we could get back to, I guess, Councilor Caddy's original question in Mr. Girton's response, that cutting any items in this budget doesn't save the residents of Fitchburg any money. I understand that. By the same token, I think that if the airport does some of the things that are in this budget, I think it smells of arrogance. Simply because they're self-sustaining, I don't think they should be awarding increases when other people aren't getting them. It would come to follow up to one of my other questions that I would have for Mr. Walker in the board. The mayor is going to have a new directive regarding people taking home vehicles in all the other departments in the city of Fitchburg. Is the airport going to adhere to that same thing, or is the Board of Commissioners for the airport going to say, well, we're separate from the other departments and don't have to behave in the same manner? I understand being self-sufficient, and I understand generating your own revenue. But if you're going to be part of the city and you're going to be an employee here, we've got a director at the airport driving a brand-new truck, while we have policemen driving cruisers that are 5 and 6 years old and that are falling apart. The Board of Commissioners at this airport needs to look at that seriously and give it consideration.
The truck is 5 years old, sir.
I'm almost positive I didn't ask you a question, Fred. Okay? And you want to talk about your arrogance, and that's exactly what we're talking about here. Every single individual in this room...
Let the counselor speak.
Every individual councilor in this room has felt it and heard it from you when you've come here before. And I, for one, am getting tired of it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Walker, did you want to respond to that?
Yes, I did. We are well aware of the mayor's directive as far as
city employees bringing vehicles, and the commission hasn't had an opportunity to meet to discuss that. But tomorrow we will meet, and that will be discussed.
Appreciate that.
Okay?
Councilor Boivin?
I'm still a little confused here about the sick personal day buyback at 81%. If I'm hearing things correctly, this is not supposed to be happening. According to our powers to be here, this is supposed to be done at the end of your career, or if you pass away before then.
If it's wrong, I'll correct it. But I'm not really sure.
I think that we should request not a ruling, an opinion from the HR director. Have him take a look at that, please. Councilor DiMartino.
I forgot what I was going to ask. It's all so confusing.
Well, we have a long list of people
No,
in line here.
No, now I realize. I'm talking about the lines persons. They don't look like they're getting any increase at all. Am I correct? In the 09 budget, or there's no increase since 08?
Their increase was already... So it includes the contract, isn't it? Right. They got their step increases last year.
So they're going to stay the same?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to be sure. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale?
Thank you. It was stated that, I understand, Mr. Gurdon, that if we were to cut this budget, it's not like it goes into a general pool and we can use it for anything else. It stays within the airport. I think what my goal is to see, it's all about reallocation and prioritizing. And I'm sure there are probably capital projects at the airport that need attention. There are probably vehicles that need attention. And there are probably staff issues, if you will. And, you know, I think any questions that come out of this council about increases in a budget, I mean, we understand the hard work that people do. It's just a question of priority, reallocation. Can that $7,000, $8,000 increase be applied to better use within the airport? I mean, we hear every year from departments that they don't have any money to do capital improvement infrastructure or buy new vehicles or something, but I guess that's the issue for me personally, is the priority. I'd like that $8,000 to be spent on something that is a critical need of your department, and, you know, this is what we're going to go through all budget season about feelings and, you know, knocking on people because we don't think they should get a raise. That is not the issue, and I don't think any counselor needs to even state that publicly. This is not our money. We decide what we believe priorities should be after the mayor submits the budget. And to me, $8,000, I'm sure there's a lot of things at the airport we can use that $8,000 for other than a salary increase, regardless of how hard the person works. Everyone works hard. So it's a saving, it's not a savings net to the city as it is a savings to your department, in my opinion, because then you can take that money and do, or the mayor can take that money and do whatever she would like with it to something that's a critical need of your department. And that's all I wanted to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Just because the airport is generating revenue, it doesn't mean that we have to spend every penny of it. That's poor fiscal management. I noticed 3 items here that seem to, year after year, ask for the maximum, but always use a third of what it gets. So where's the other 2/3 going? The first one would be the airport improvements. For fiscal '07, you only spent $1,400. Fiscal '08, you asked for $16,000, but you only spent $3,000. Now you're asking for $10,000, and you were given $10,000. What improvements are you looking to?
We've had a heating system fail in one of our hangars. We have to replace that. That alone is going to probably cost us $8,000, $6,000 to replace.
Okay.
We don't even though these numbers are in the budget, we don't spend money unless we have it in our checkbook. And that's why you see some of these numbers are they're not spent because we have to make the priorities. We don't do things if we can't afford to do it.
So for year '08, you expense 16,000 and revised expense 3,000.
Where are you on the line, sir?
For airport improvements, same line item. What happened to the other 13,000?
Nothing, we didn't spend it.
Okay. And it's still in the budget?
Yes. Thing is, if it's not in this budget, we can't spend it.
The clothing line item, is that a contractual obligation?
I think it is.
Going up by 117%?
That one is uniforms.
Anybody wearing uniforms at the airport? Security and compliance, going up by 183%?
Yes, sir.
What does-
Occasionally, well, we have to buy the badges and that type of thing.
You expense 3,000, you spend $1,000.
That
You're
is
asking
left.
another 3,000, so you're looking to spend the entire 3,000 this year?
Again, we don't know what the state's going to mandate us to do, but again, this is the maintenance for badges, et cetera, and that type of thing for airport security
Okay,
and the gates.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a few questions myself. With regard to security and compliance going up 183%, following up with Vice President Tran's question, are we getting any money at all from Homeland Security to subsidize this line?
No.
Is there any way that we can look for grants from Homeland Security to subsidize this line item?
If I may, that can be another item to discuss at the commission meeting to see if we can find any money like that.
I would appreciate it if you could put that on the agenda and have a little discussion about that. On the item at the bottom of the page on insurance, that's going up only 3%. However, it's my understanding, and I will ask Mr. Saracen if he could verify this. It's my understanding that through the general fund, there is some insurance. We're picking up some of the cost of the insurance at the airport. Am I correct?
We're picking up some of it for the property and some liability. However, this is in addition to that coverage that they could explain.
Could you tell me what this insurance line item is for?
If I could defer that to the manager?
It's for liability insurance, hangar rash, that type thing, and we had one incident last year where we got some bad fuel in an airplane, and it cost $1,000 to repair.
The question I have is, why would we have two liability policies?
Well,
Nature of the business.
there may be, they serve as different coverage. Airport is a whole nother area, as you, the manager mentioned. The coverage that you have, airport hangar and airport liability is different than public official liability or property insurance for the building. So that's mainly it.
Thank you. We did go through a long period of time where we had one building where we had no lease on it. What's the situation with leases on airport buildings that that the city is involved in? Do we have leases on every building down there now?
We don't have leases on every building. We have leases through the condo association, and we have tenants at will.
And
And Bullock.
Is there any reason why we shouldn't have leases down there?
The commission feels as though it has, at this time, more control over rental and situations that may happen with tenants.
with a tenant at will at this time.
Is there any tenant at will down there right now that you know of that's having, or has recently had financial difficulties that can't pay?
I wouldn't be able to answer that right now. I'm not positive what the financial situation is of all the tenants at this time.
Well, I think, a Dun & Bradstreet check on some of these people might be in the offing to make sure that we're staying on top of these tenant at will issues. You have a line item here for fuel. Aviation fuel and oil are going up only 3%. I have heard today, I heard it last week, and I would just like to pass it on and have it verified in the future that there are approximately a couple of dozen people who house their planes at the airport now who are buying fuel elsewhere because it's cheaper. Now, the question in my mind is, do we need to go up 3% if this is going to continue, or shall we level fund this line? I don't want you to give me an answer tonight,
Okay.
gentlemen,
Yeah.
but I would really like to have you follow up on this, because it could be a rumor, but I've got it from a very reliable source. And if that's the case, then maybe we should level fund this. Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. Piggybacking off Councilor Tran, I understand what was said, that if we don't have the money, we don't spend it. In my opinion, when you craft these budgets, you craft them based on the revenues you're going to take in. There are line item accounts such as airport improvements, aviation fuel and oil, airfield maintenance. These line item accounts aren't even at 50% spent for the year, and and this is through April, and this is directly from the status sheet. I understand encumbrances, but, aviation and fuel, as the President just stated, through April, we've only spent 57% of that budget number. So we've got another 43% to go with 2 months left. Airport improvements, I take it that means capital improvements. Through April, we've only spent 3% of that budget. So when I look at this, and I understand what you said about revenues coming in, again, I'm going back to the arguments I hear every year about we're cut to the bone, we don't have any money to do what we want to do, yet we've got several line item accounts in here that are not even a quarter spent, and we're almost at the end of the year. So I'm not saying I'm personally being misled. I mean, I understand that you plan for things and they don't happen, but there's a lot of line items in here that aren't even at 25%. So I question if those numbers are, as Councilor Tran said, airport improvements, you were given $16,000. You've only spent 4% of that, so you're going to get $10,000 next year. If I had my way, you'd get $5,000, not $10,000. In my opinion, if it's there, and you don't have any money, why aren't we using that money? And you said because we don't get the revenues. When I hear that, I think to myself, well, isn't that how it is every year then? You budget $16,000 for airfield improvements, but you're telling me that we're not going to do them this year because I understand other things take precedent, but you said that we don't spend what we don't have. Well, you were given $16,000 and you didn't even touch 5% of that. So this is where I'm very eager to hear the opinion of legal counsel, because if I had my way, you wouldn't even get 10.
Yes, sir.
Can we talk a little bit about what we're trying to do?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. We fixed the roof on Bullock's Hangar. So as a result of the roof, we were able to bring in another airplane. We have another Lear 45 there. That's going to increase our fuel consumption by another 30% probably on the jet side. We've got or not a new helicopter, but a helicopter that just, they're doing power line reconstruction. They're spending $1,000 a week on fuel. We're going to put together a business plan that we talked about, and hopefully we can go out and market this airport and get some people to invest in it. But they're not going to invest in it if they see a struggling airport. We can't. I'm not quite sure how to answer your question, but there is more revenue coming into there. We were talking about the level of funding a minute ago on that line. Yes, we have some people going away, but we can't compete with the Gardners and the Hawthorns. Their cities substitute some of their airports. They don't have the same kind of budgeting thing that we do. We have a full-time staff. They're a part-time staff, or the type of thing. They're not always open. We're open 7 days a week. Our costs are a little bit higher. We offer more services than that. And to tell you the truth, the people that Mr. Connery's talking about are only buying 10, 15 gallons at a whack. And it's, another thing we're doing is we want to put in a self-serve fueling station there. So we don't have to service these little guys, and we can knock the price way down to minimum.
So my question then, to either you or to the auditor, is we're almost at the end of May.
Mm-hmm.
We have 1 month left. How are you doing revenues versus expenses? Are we going to take in more than we spend, or are we in trouble?
We're running in the black. Last year we had about $80,000 in the bank, and we need between $80,000 and $100,000 just to operate. Because if you have to buy a jet fuel load and an av fuel load at the same time, it costs us about $70,000.
So that $100,000 that you made last year is in your expenses in the budget for this year?
Yeah, this $600,000. You got to understand that that's not cost. That's what we buy the fuel for. That $600,000 represents about $700,000 worth of revenue. So if you cut the $600,000 to $500,000, now you've decreased my budget or decreased my revenue by another $100,000.
So by cutting the aviation fuel and oil, we're reducing your revenue?
Absolutely. I make 86 cents a gallon on every gallon of low-lead gasoline that I sell. I make $1.30 for every gallon of jet fuel that I sell. And the jet fuel lately has been going up. So that's where the revenue is. And that's why we've been trying to point the airport towards a bigger runway, towards attracting the corporate customers, so that we can start generating this revenue.
So you want to expand the runway and do facility improvements of that magnitude?
Absolutely.
And that's why I'm asking to understand what we're going to come in at this year, what added money we're getting, how much should we take in as opposed to our expenses, so we can develop a capital improvement plan. And that goes back to my original point about we have money in here for improvements and we're not spending it. But we were in the black last year, and we could be in the black this year. Why isn't that excess money that you're making, because it stays with you, why isn't that being reallocated to infrastructure? And if it is, why aren't we spending it? You know, I heard last year we had needs at the airport, roof need, $16,000, we haven't touched it. But we were in the black last year, and we may be in the black this year. Where's that excess money we're making at the airport? Where are you putting that money in your budget?
It's sitting in inventory right now.
How much is in inventory?
We have two 8,000-gallon tanks. One is just, I'd say it's probably about, actually, 4 and 2, 6,000 gallons.
All I'm trying to point out here, and I'll be brief at the end here, but we have expenses, we have revenues. If we exceed our expenses by collecting more revenue than what we're spending, typically you take that excess money and you develop a plan for that money in the out years. That's the 5-year annual operating plan metric that, businesses go through. And if we're making money at the airport, I want to know what we're doing with that excess money. Are we building a new hangar? Are we expanding the runway? Or are we planning in the next few years to keep building on those revenue increases, so by the time in 5 years we're all set, we can do the expansion of the runway? again, if we make money at the airport, it should be going somewhere in the airport. And back to my original point, and Councilor Strand's point, we have facility improvements in the budget, and we're not spending it. So where is that excess money going? If we need the money. If we don't have any money, where is it going? So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councilor Hay.
Follow up to Mr. Saracen. He indicated that the city's paying some insurance for the airport. Is there a dollar figure that's attached to that, Dick?
I don't have it, but I could probably get it from the insurance company.
I'd appreciate that.
Councilor Joseph, did you have a question?
Thank you.
Councilor Caddy.
I just want to make a statement. We've spoken before, and you said that there's a line of people waiting to put their planes at the airport. Well, if we have someone putting their airport, they better buy gas at our airport. And if they don't buy that gas at our airport, and they're going somewhere else to buy it where it's cheaper, we should ask them to leave. That's pretty straightforward.
They're paying $200 a month to sit at the airport?
Well, let them go to Orange to park it and then drive their car to Orange to pick up their plane. If they're staying on our airport, buy fuel from our airport. That's pretty simple. But one question for Mr. Saracen. Could we get a copy of any existing labor contracts so we can review some of these clothing allowances and sick time buyback?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions on the airport budget? Mr. Girton, Mr. Tucker, would you like to make any closing statements or observations?
No, but I mean, yes, I would. I kind of feel disappointed that the city council feels as though we're arrogant, and we by no means want to act that way or be that way. We've often asked many of the city councilors for assistance, for advice, to help our improvements, or to help improve our situation at the airport, and I continue to hope that we can improve that perception. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilors, tomorrow night, we begin at 7 p.m. with the police, city clerk, city council, license commission, and elections.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?